Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I do hope that you've still been posting on our social media platforms. Please continue to engage with us on hashtag Skill Summit 2022. That is hashtag Skill Summit 2022. And also feel free to visit our expo exhibition and chat, interact. We want to hear from you, whether it's grievances, whether it's concerns, or even recommendations. And the more you engage, you stand a chance to win amazing prizes. Without wasting any more time, we will now cross over to our panel discussion called The Rise of Artisan Careers. We did hear the minister emphasize so much on increasing participation and partnership within the private sector and public sector regarding artisanry. So with that, we'll be having our moderator, Dr. Sean Jones, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Artisan Training Institute. Over to you, Dr. Jones.
I have the privilege of hosting this panel. I've had a look through the CVs of the panel, and there's some impressive experience amongst them. In opening up, we have with us Ken Lead, who's the Director for National Training and Development with the printing industry of South Africa. We have Manuela Prina, Head of Skills Identification and Development for the unit of the European Training Foundation. Roseanne Marcel Kampfer, Head of Training Solutions for Kendua, and Celeste Leroux, CEO of React Group. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Could I ask each of the panel to just share for a minute some of your background and professional interests and a little bit about the organizations that you lead? And perhaps we could kick off with you, Ken.
Thank you very much. As you've said, Ken Lead, I'm Director of Training and Development for Printing SA. I started as an artisan in the newspaper printing environment in Zimbabwe a couple of years ago, and came to South Africa, as I've said in my CV, with a bag of clothes, a guitar, and 700 Rand, and made my career in the printing sector. So I've always been passionate about training. I came to South Africa to further my education and training, and unfortunately was a little bit disappointed with that, but set out to improve matters. I joined the newly formed Industries Training Board in 1990 and set about developing competency-based modular trade training programs for over 25 trades in the sector. And as you all know, those all converted into, or were supposed to have converted into learnerships with the introductions of Setas. And now we're in a new era of developing occupational qualifications via the QCTO, for which a project that we are partnered with the FP&M Seta to make sure that our industry training and career pathways of occupational qualifications leading to artisanal qualifications are developed and aligned to industry's needs. So that's a project that will keep me busy for at least another 18 months before we introduce 25, well, let's put it 12 new trades and with 25 derived occupational qualifications. That's my pet project at the moment.
Wonderful, appreciate it. Thank you very much. Manuela, could you share a bit of your background?
Good morning to all of you, and thank you for inviting me and inviting the European Training Foundation to be part of this important event. Just a couple of words about the ETF. ETF is the agency of the European Union that has been there for more than 25 years and is focusing on supporting countries in skills development, in particular looking at vocational education and training, as well as the labor market reforms. We have been working with countries that are around the European Union, but in the last few years, our cooperation with, especially with the African Union, is increasing. In particular, as regards the work on looking at qualifications, and we are working with the African Union and all countries in Africa on the African Continental Qualification Framework. Why is this important? It's important because we know that looking at qualifications is not only an exercise of, let's say, maintaining a system in an order, but it's an exercise that allows us to look into excellence and into looking into the future. And this is what matters to us. So to do that, on top of qualifications, we really pay a lot of attention on promoting the concept of excellence in the world of crafts in particular. And when I say craft, I mean a large number of professions. In the last couple of years, we have been also looking a lot in the world of artistic crafts, in particular, looking at those professions that are very specific, but that retain a lot of value for our communities, our societies, and the cultural heritage of the unicity of each community in this world. So I would like to share with you some stories in relation to those three areas. And thank you for inviting us again.
Pleasure. Thank you very much. If we could hear from you, Roseanne, from Kandua.
Perfect. So I'm head of human capital solutions at startup Kandua, but I also dabble in operations. And as an operations professional for many years, there's a lot of areas where I get my hands dirty. So from training to new business development, et cetera, et cetera. I'm really passionate about culture and how this impacts our overall team and in turn productivity. I've dubbed myself the Chief Vibes Officer at Kandua. So I take care of the team behind the team. At Kandua, right now, I think we have over 35,000 artisans on our platform. And Kandua builds easy tools that empower people professionally so that they can make an impact, so that they can make money. We believe that we need to build this amazing product to a technology-based product that can help artisans acquire jobs so that we can help them introduce them to new markets, new customer bases, etc., etc. We've made over 400 million Rand worth of work happen to date, and we're only just getting started. We really, really care about not only the product, but the people who use our product. We believe that it's the future. We believe that tech is the way to go. And I'm super excited to be here and have this conversation with you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Suzanne. And finally, Celeste, if you could share a bit of your background.
Yes, thank you for having me, and good morning, everybody. So I'm the CEO of React Group. And what we do is, one of the businesses, React 24, we render site services incorporating artisans to facilities management companies, to parastatals, insurances, and so forth. Then my baby that I'm really passionate about is React Training College, and it's the first Black woman-owned Seta accredited plumbing training college within the Western Cape. I also sit on as a director on the board of the CIDB, which is the Construction Industry Development Board of South Africa, as well as IOPSA, which is the Institute of Plumbing South Africa, as well as SAVIP, which is the South African Wine Industry Professional Body. I'm really passionate about furthering women in construction, because it hasn't always been open and friendly for women. And I also do feel that societal biases are doing women a disservice by saying that artisans, a job as an artisan isn't for them, and women can't do this and that and so forth. So I'm very passionate about that, but also about putting artisans back into their own communities, and in so doing, encouraging entrepreneurship, which is extremely important. Not only that, I feel that we need to uplift the profile of the artisan, because I feel that there is a perception about the profile of the artisan. So that is me in a nutshell. I'm really excited to be with you. And once again, thank you for inviting me to the conversation.
Pleasure. Thank you, Celeste. Just briefly on Artisan Training Institute, we train roughly 2,000 apprentices per annum on 3 different campuses. We've created a digital blended learning platform with content across 15 different engineering trades. We've also launched our own private TVET college to bridge young people into apprenticeships. And finally, we've also have a foundation which raises funding to assist young people to enter into the engineering trades. Folk, without further ado, I'd like to move on. I think perhaps if I could just create a bit of context before we kick off our discussion, and just highlight what we know. I think it's very clear that back in 2008, at the height of the global boom, economic boom, the biggest inhibitor to growth was the absence or shortage of technical skills in various economies around the world. So we know that technical skills are vital for an economy. In addition to that, in our environment, in a developing economy context, we have a massive challenge in that we're still a highly unequal society. We've just, in terms of the latest World Bank report, South Africa still ranked 164th, which is last, basically, out of all their countries surveyed in terms of inequality. South Africa is also haunted by staggering unemployment, sporadic civil unrest, rampant crime, and poor education. And we know that we need artisans, although the press often generalize as to very broadly around art apprenticeships and the fact that we need artisans, and they're not very specific about the ebbs and flows, and then the reality that in some areas we have an oversupply and in others an undersupply. So against that backdrop, you know, the other potential barriers that we are facing, which is anecdotal at this point based on my experience, is that, you know, I don't believe we have effective career guidance. And Michael Peter, who spoke earlier, also suggested that there was a mismatch between skills development and supply in terms of supply and demand, and I have to agree with that. And then also the challenges of educating parents, teachers, and other societal leaders in redressing stereotypes related to vocational education. I believe that in most instances, a choice in a vocation should be a first choice and not a second choice. And how do we deal with that? And how do we deal with the reskilling and upskilling of unemployed individuals in this country? We have a massive challenge with early school leavers who land up sitting at home and are unemployable. And certainly if they're not trained, will never really be employable in the formal sector. And then also creating capacity in the TVET colleges to meet the requirements of industry. So we have challenges, which can also be seen as opportunities, I guess. But perhaps by way of show of hands, if you want to jump in, please feel free to jump in just by raising your hand. But Ken, maybe we could start with you again and just get your initial thoughts on some of these comments.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you. One of the biggest challenges that we face in our sector is that it's not deemed to be, as Dr. Mohammed said earlier, has not deemed to be a sexy sector at all, and that school leavers are almost conditioned into this, that they need to go to university to get a degree in order to get a job. And I think that's where we make a massive mistake. There are so many exciting career opportunities available in the different sectors. And obviously I speak for the printing and packaging, visual communication sector in particular. So I really believe we need guidance of young people at school to say, these are the opportunities that you have available in the sector. And this is why we've designed and developed in partnership with the Seta a foundational learning program. So young people who may not have an advantaged educational background or may not even contemplate or could afford to go into university could come on this program as an unemployed learner, get to understand our sector, get to go through our array of work-life orientation programs, our occupational health and safety programs. We showcase we've created a beautiful array of occupational videos in a project with DHET a couple of years ago. So we were able to showcase these occupations without taking kids on tours to different printing and packaging factories. So they're really, really helpful in terms of providing career guidance. And then there's an internship that's plugged onto the end of that. So they get to understand and feel this is what the sector is all about. And these are the exciting or potentially exciting career opportunities open to you. And we found over the years, over the last couple of years, that we've partnered with the Seta in this project. We started in 2018. And Dr. Mohammed quoted that we've trained over 100 learners, and over 50% of those young people have got jobs today.
That's
which I think which is fantastic throughput as far as Setas are concerned. I know that Dr. Fileng Yende is passionate about this program as well. And I'm also really bowled over when you see some of the success stories coming out of that, with young people being apprenticed in some of our new trades, and doing so well.
Yeah.
So I think we really need that. You have a focus on artisanal training, but there's a pathway that they need to go on. So one of the things that I find lacking in the new QCTO structure is that there isn't this crawl, walk, run scenario, and that we focus on developing curricula, but we don't focus on developing learning programs. So that we can start with a foundational learning program, we end with a team leader program, but there are a whole lot of other, what I call off-ramps in between, where you have jobs. If I look at bookbinding, maybe an easy one to articulate. If I've completed my foundational learning program, I can become a guillotine operator and off-ramp there with a qualification. I could carry on my pathway and become a folding machine operator with a qualification. I could carry on and get saddle stitching, adhesive binding, and then ultimately have all the knowledge, skill, and experience required to gain access to a trade test and get an artisanal qualification as a recognized bookbinder. So that's what we're creating. We're creating occupational qualifications and pathways to enhance career advancement and opportunities in the sector. And I think that's really something that I'm extremely passionate about and want to see happening before I sail off into the sunset one day soon.
There's some great wisdom in that, and I think you definitely on the right path there, Ken, without doubt. Absolutely.
Okay.
Roseanne, you want to make a comment as well?
Yeah. Great initiative, Ken. I love the success stories, and I think that we need to be a lot louder with the success stories so that we can really address the stereotypes. And that's really what I want to chat about a little bit. With a lot of the artisans on our platforms that we have conversations with, they end up in the space as a last resort. Very often as a last resort, because I really didn't have anywhere else to go. And where I would like to see us going is that it becomes aspirational more than a last resort. And I think that will come from us just being louder about, the success stories, as well as, this is an amazing route for a potential entrepreneur, because there is money to be made, and we need to be really, really loud about these stories.
Manuela, you can probably provide an international perspective on some of these issues that we face on a local level here in South Africa. Would you like to share?
Yeah, with pleasure. First of all, I would say that really the world is a small town when it comes to issues we are facing as regard training, and also the attention that is given to crafts. Now, I have to share my personal story. When I started to work 22 years ago, vocational education and training in particular was seen as the very little sister in the education system. something that everybody was saying, okay, and then there is also that sector. Today, we are not there anymore. I think there is a very strong attention and many opportunities, but also very good experiences that demonstrate that really the future has different characteristics. Now, let me share with you what are those characteristics. First of all, we know that vocational education and training is much more complex than before. So investing in the world of crafts and investing in training people in different professions requires a much higher degree in terms of competencies, including technical competence. This is valid for all professions, including the hairdresser. You know, the level of also technology, chemistry, and other type of things that are now in that sector have an impact on how we train professionals, even in professions that are considered simple, but it's not the case anymore. So we have a higher complexity in all professions. The second is that we have much more attention in what we call the higher vocational education and training. So specialized areas of work that of course are impacted greatly by technology and also by digitalization in terms of how the profession is carried forward. The third is that we have a technical and vocational element also in professions that are not traditionally looked at in the world of craft, but in reality, the future comes from bringing those realities together. And this is a trend that we see all over the world. Now, how to make it happen? The first attention is to be given to, of course, the partnerships and working together. Now, in the European Union, one of the actions we are carrying forward is the attention on the centers of vocational excellence. And those centers can be of different nature. In fact, we have schools, we have training providers, we have also universities, but we also have companies that join into this effort. The ETF has an international network of centers of vocational excellence, including from the African continent. And in this context, we see a lot of innovation taking place. So one lesson is really partnership and its attention on the sector on one side, but on the competencies on the other, and bringing up those new profiles or hybrid profiles that we didn't have before, but that will be growing in our societies. The second point I wanted to share with you is the focus on what I call the rare professions. Professions that are important in the society, but are maybe disappearing. And here I refer in particular to the work of artisans that again benefits from the union between tradition and innovation. And when we look, for example, at some questions that we have as regards our societies like greening, sustainability, cohesion, inclusion, we see that the crafts professions and the stories of crafts have a lot to contribute in many of the problems that affect our societies today. So giving the attention to the world of crafts and ensuring that crafts has this access also to innovation and how to bring forward those professional elements and traditions is extremely important. And we see that more demand is there in terms of this specific area of work.
Thank you very much. That's very interesting. Is entrepreneurship, I hear you saying that innovation and crafts need tighter linkages. Is entrepreneurship linked to that in any way?
Absolutely, yes. you know, what in ETF we always focus on is, on one side, of course, we have the technical skills, right? Technical skills. Let's imagine ourselves as a T. So it's our verticality. And we need to be excellent. So we need our vertical dimension of the T to be solid. But then there is a horizontal dimension that it's what ensures that our verticality gets space in the labor market, can construct relationships, can work in partnership with others, can find opportunities, can exploit, for example, the opportunities from digitalization or, you know, access to different markets. And this, of course, is the area of what we call the transversal competencies. And definitely entrepreneurship is one of that. It doesn't mean that everybody needs to be an entrepreneur, but it means that all of us, and I include myself into it, we need to be entrepreneurial in the way we approach our work. And this is valid across all professions. So those transversal competencies are key to really provide a learning journey, as Ken was saying before. It's not about the curriculum, it's about a learning process where we give people the possibility to be a solid T in both dimensions.
That's invaluable comment, I think. And I'm not sure about the rest of the panel. I'm going to ask Ken, I see you have your hand up, and also Celeste to come in. I don't think South Africans are very good at encouraging entrepreneurship from the get-go in terms of their work ethic, the way they approach their work. Even if they're employed in industry, there should still be entrepreneurship, or entrepreneurial thinking should still be encouraged. And that's what I'm hearing you say, Manuela. And it's something I think we perhaps need to work on. Ken, you had your hand up, and then after that, Celeste, if you would like to come in.
No, Sean, I was just applauding Manuela. It was excellently articulated. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I agree. I also would like to give her a round of applause. Celeste, would you like to come in and share your thoughts?
Yes. On entrepreneurship, I think we also need to understand in the context of South Africa, to start a business in South Africa is extremely expensive. Just to register a company alone is expensive. And then the other thing that I think should be encouraged is EDPs, so programs that help entrepreneurs, that assist them in the businesses. You know, it's very different when you have passion and you're an artisan. That means you're good at your job, but it's very different to running your own business where numbers are concerned, looking for opportunities, identifying those opportunities, strategy even, considering those worst case scenarios. You know, it doesn't always come naturally. So I do believe that those incubators are extremely important to develop entrepreneurs. And like Manuela said, not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody needs to be an entrepreneur. However, in the context of South Africa and our economy, in order to encourage entrepreneurship, there are certain things that need to be put in place.
Great.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you very much, Celeste. I think that's also some great wisdom. Earlier on, Celeste touched on the issue of gender, and it's a topic that comes up over and over again, especially as it relates to the engineering or any trades, in fact, which were traditionally male-dominated occupations. I'm interested to hear from Ken. You were sharing some of your experience in the printing industry. How have you folk in that industry dealt with the gender points that need to be dealt with?
Well, it's interesting if we take on to some of our entrepreneurial programs that we launched with the Seta a number of years ago, and with our colleagues in Europe, FESPA. We got funding to develop an entrepreneurial course, which I call Business Basics. It's a week program, very practically orientated. And then the second week is a skills program for screen printing. So we initially took ladies from different townships in the Gauteng region, and who were selling products on some of your typical tourist markets in those townships, and we took their skills, their design and creativity skills, and taught them how to screen print, and we taught them how to put a business plan together and to run their own businesses. And that has been a major success. We've run the program a number of years. COVID obviously put a damper on it because of its very, very practically orientated program. But we've got what I call a whole host of warm and fuzzy feeling stories that came out of that, with ladies who now have their own screen printing businesses. I can think of one in particular who got a beautiful opportunity through one of our partners, Konica Minolta, to start a business hub opportunity. And she now runs a digital printing business with her screen printing business and employs 7 people. So that's what we've done. A lot of our, Dr. Mohammed touched on some of our blended e-learning programs in the Creative Suite, Creative Cloud Suite of Adobe. In partnership with Morningstar Design, we've delivered that, and a large percentage of the participants on those programs are ladies. So pre-press design sort of lends itself to ladies, and not that some of our traditional printing trades, we have a good blend of gender coming in terms of apprenticeships. So it's good to see. Obviously, we've got other dynamics to consider as well in terms of demographics as well, which we address quite nicely.
Thank you, Ken. You almost, you touched on the point of partnerships, which was raised by Manuel earlier. And perhaps it's a theme I'd like to pick up on once we've heard from Roseanne. I think she's got her hand up, but I just want to park it. But I do think we should talk in more detail about partnerships and how that can create opportunity as well. Roseanne, do you want to comment?
Yeah. So in a recent survey that we've done, we found that less than 10% of the pros on our platform are women. And just from further research that we've done, we believe that this number is in line with figures from the US, Canada, and Europe, where women occupy around, I think, 25% of the roles in the construction industry. And I think that we would be remiss to not mention the barriers that women face, because we see, if we look at the figures from, the TVET colleges, the women coming through, the young ladies who are doing apprentices that Ken just mentioned, but after that, where do these women go? Where are they? And what are the barriers that they face? And how can we assist them, and how can we navigate, and how can we guide so that there is a beautiful pathway for them to follow with the appropriate support that women specifically need?
I do tend to agree. It is there definitely are barriers, and a lot of our customer segment is in mining, which is a very harsh environment, and there are undoubted barriers for women and even young men who have to work in difficult conditions. So I do think it's a challenge. Celeste, do you also want to comment on the gender issue?
Yes, please. Especially in construction, women face sometimes insurmountable obstacles. But the one thing that I do feel, and Roseanne mentioned it earlier, is to highlight those success stories. So, for example, in the construction industry, the DPWI, the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, together with the CIDB, have come up with an ERWIC Award. So that is recognizing women in construction. And I can't tell you how wonderful it is for women to be together, to celebrate each other. Another thing that I found is women network differently to men as well. If you walk into a room, and the way men network is, they will talk about their successes and the experience. When women get together, they will share stories. they will share their struggles. So we need to bear that in mind as well, that men and women have different needs. And so they do business differently. But also, I just want to go back a little bit to vocational choices, and something that I don't want us to miss out on as well. You know, historically, when we look at artisans, they were maybe people that couldn't afford to go to colleges. And so what they did is they'd go to site, they'd start building, they'd start doing plumbing. So 30, 40 years in, their salaries haven't been raised because they don't have that formal qualification. So it's important to recognize that artisan recognition of prior learning, because what that means is we have people in the industry that have been there for 20, 30 years, that have all the knowledge, that have the on-site experience, but because they haven't been formally trade tested, they're not earning what they're worth. And so I'm finding in our industry especially, you know, it's a challenge for us to get funding for that particular group of people. And I wouldn't want to leave them out as well. Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, great. I do think it's a challenge. We've got so many unemployed individuals who do have prior experience. So what you're raising is invaluable. Absolutely, Celeste. On the issue of ARPL, you know, it's almost now entrenched in what we do from a legislative point of view. And what I'm really pleased with is that it's almost been very specifically outlined in terms of process, because it was a terrible loophole historically where that got abused by fly-by-night training providers. So you know that ARPL, artisan recognition of prior learning, is now almost regulated, and I'm excited about it. I think it can make a difference to a lot of people's lives, and I'm glad you raised that, Celeste. Thank you. Could we touch on partnerships? I'm really interested to know, you know, what type of partnerships your different organizations leverage in order to make a difference on the ground. Ken, you've got your hand up. Do you want to make a comment before we go on to that specific topic?
Yes, I just wanted to tag on to the ARPL process. I think I agree with you to a certain extent that now that it's embedded in the entire qualification development process, especially as far as the trade is concerned, where you have this, well, artisan trade, absolutely. But one of my concerns is that whilst it is an excellent toolkit that is developed, you end up with what I essentially call a gap analysis toolkit. So you're finding out through that process where is a gap in the candidate's knowledge, skill, or experience, and setting about filling those gaps in order to provide that candidate an opportunity to actually do a trade test and get that qualification that Celeste was referring to. So I think it's great, but I don't think we've applied our minds sufficiently to the cost and time of that process. And I think we really need to be speaking to NAM, we need to be speaking to the QCTO to see if we can't fast track that in cases where we have deserving candidates.
Yeah, that would make sense. It would make sense. Look, what you're touching on there is absolutely correct. It is an expensive process and time consuming. But I think post-COVID, where there must be thousands of young people out there that have experience that need to be fast tracked back into employment, and I think this could be a valuable process to apply.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Ken, thank you. And in terms of partnerships, folk, we all use them from time to time. I think sometimes we enter partnerships almost subconsciously without realizing it. But it is important to leverage these. Could some of you share some of the partnerships you've enjoyed and how they've made a difference on the ground? Roseanne, you've got your hand up.
Sure. So our primary focus at Zambia is enabling access to markets for our independent contractors as well as small businesses on our platform to find customers so that they can make money. However, they need more than that. They need more than just the customers. So through partnership, we also offer our pros business and personal skills development opportunities. And we also want to, again, just going back to that gender issue, we actively encourage our female pros to apply for these programs when they offer them, and that requires extra effort. Like Celeste said, our ladies network very differently to their male counterparts, so we really need to pay close attention to that. And the one partnership in particular that I want to highlight is a program called the Makerbot Program. So the Makerbot Program is a partnership between Pandora, Qualification, and Makerbot is an incubation program that focuses on enabling artisan-based businesses to formalize, grow, and succeed. And this includes peer and mentorship support. And I just want to highlight support because yes, I can come to the program and it's all groovy and it's great, but I need more than just coming to a class. I need more than just to be taught whatever you're trying to teach me. There's a level of support that I also need when I'm coming there. I need an ear. I need, we have this thing called, I think it's called business hours or office hours, where we offer our office space to our service providers to come and chat to us in a mentorship capacity, use the printer, use the internet, there's a computer for you to use, and support comes in different shapes and forms. And we need to stop having these conversations in boardrooms about what our service providers, our pros or our artisans need, and go out and have conversations with them and get the accurate data about what kind of support do you really need so that we can have real, sincere, true conversations and bring to the table what they actually need.
That's also so important. And I'm smiling because, I've seen so many entities impose training on communities that they believe the communities need, as opposed to, and it happens a lot in mining as well, where the communities are trained, but they're not really the right skills. So you're touching on a great point. And the other anecdotal thing that I'd like to point out is that there's so much goodwill. In industry really do want to make a difference, and we have our CSI budgets, and we all run off in our different directions and spend cash, but don't look for opportunities to partner with other like-minded entities and rather create bang for buck by working in a more collaborative way to direct the funding. So there's a lot of money being spent, but it's almost like a shotgun approach. And I almost get the sense that lack of partnership type approaches is possibly an inhibitor to success. I don't know if any of you agree with that.
Absolutely.
And Manuela, your partnerships in Europe, besides purely government-driven partnerships, what other types of partnerships exist?
Yes, I'll give you some example. The first is a level of partnership, as you said, where we actually work with different countries. So, of course, with public entities or those that are have responsibilities for specific areas, one of which is qualification, but also validation. So I shared with you, and I hope it can be shared with all participants, the website of the African Continental Qualification Framework, where there are all those information regarding how countries are working together as regard, more macro issues. Then there is a second level of partnership, which is among training centers or those who are actually providers and engage in skills development. And here, one of the things that we are supporting a lot is the creation of networks on different subjects. At the moment, as ETF, the context of the conversation we are having today, I already mentioned the network of centers of vocational excellence, but also we have a network of innovative educators, again, coming from different experiences in terms of where they work and what subjects they teach, but coming together and exchanging brings not only more confidence to individuals, but also provides the opportunity to accelerate some of the ideas and to put in practice things in different contexts. Finally, there is a third level of partnership, which I am a very fan of, which is the creation of partnership within the community. Now, very often we know that the right hand doesn't know what the left hand does. So maybe two artisans are working, they have their shops, one next to the other, but they miss out on opportunities to actually do something together, which could even be sharing a service, or sharing, a shared database of contacts, or doing a promotion activity, or doing a training together. Now, sometimes this role needs to be taken up by intermediary organizations, chambers of commerce, sector association, that can really have this particular attention. But it's key because especially in the world of craft, where we have micro enterprises or very small enterprises, if we want to think about the future, partnership is what we need to support. Now, we can have, of course, smart ideas and some entrepreneurs or some companies that do it by themselves. But in the majority of the cases, of course, people are busy with their job and they don't have the time to look into this element. So there is where the community services, the association services, the Chamber of Commerce need to kick in. Now, we have done many studies on this subject, and this is one point of discussion with many of our stakeholders, to really provide much more attention to crafts, because crafts is the largest number usually of companies that we have in most of the countries of the world. So our preoccupation should not be on big industries. They can take care by themselves at the end of the day. Sorry to be so blunt. Of course, there are many initiatives also, and the number of employees, it's very important. But we have to be preoccupied about crafts and the world of crafts, because it's very capillary, and we need to take care of this change at the community level.
Thank you. Thank you, Manuela. Appreciate that perspective. I'd like to have a little bit of fun with the South African delegates, Manuela. Maybe we can kick off with you, Celeste. If you had an audience with the Ministers of Labour and Education tomorrow, what would you want to discuss with them in terms of unlocking artisan careers?
Thank you, Sean. First of all, I would definitely want to explore not just apprenticeships, but practical training, which is so lacking. We really have a struggle as far as that is concerned, because it's all fine and well to do the theoretical, to do the ministerial learning, your N1, N2, etc. But then when it comes to the practical component, is where we have the problem. Even with us in our industry and with our businesses, we try and do a value chain sort of thing, where the candidates come to the college, they do their training, their theoretical training, but then they come over to the other business to do their on-site training, their practical training. And yet I've found in the industry that this is where a lot of even TVET colleges, where they struggle to get that practical component, the practical learning and the on-site training for their candidates. And so we need to pay attention to that a little bit. Also, I feel that not just government, but we need to look to big businesses as well. I was recently, or a year ago, on a panel where a very huge company and a listed company expressly said that they don't want to do business with small businesses. And I was really taken aback. And I believe that big businesses, their duty is to show smaller businesses how they want those smaller businesses to do businesses with them. And so they need to do those incubations that we were talking about. So we can't just leave it up to government. I don't think that it's fair. Big businesses need to get involved as well, where they say, this is how we want you to do business with us. These are the tools that we are willing to give you to do business with us, to sort of give those businesses an advantage. And then the other thing that I really liked what Manuela was talking about, in the communities, to sort of build an ecosystem of skills, so that people don't, again, wait on government to help them with housing, facilities, etc., where we can support each other as entrepreneurs. So we have a painter in the one street and we have a bricklayer in the other street, and so forth, to build that ecosystem in the communities, I feel is extremely important. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to discuss, especially even at grassroots levels as well, where we teach our kids. My concern is that when they're in the younger grades, grade 1 and 2 and maybe even 3, they play and they tactile, but then what happens to those kids afterwards that show a real interest in that? And then it becomes the theoretical, the formal training, and not all kids excel at that. So we're sort of losing out, and I think this is why we have the issue of early school leavers, is because we're not concentrating on that practical, hands-on element. And so we do need to give more cognizance to that, so that even simple things like reading a plan or opening up a plan, identifying, I think that our subjects at school should be a lot more practical, where subjects that are implemented in real life, and that we can use further down the line. So to answer your question, I would love to have a whole week with the ministers to unpack and go through things, because you know what, I think this is where diversity comes in. And the beauty of diversity is where we get different ideas, where different cultures and different communities think about things differently. And that's what we need to consider. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah. I can't disagree with anything you've said, and I do think we miss opportunities, without doubt, by not embracing and getting more deeper and wider viewpoints. Roseanne, how would you tackle that?
So yes, agree with everything that Celeste is saying. And Celeste, when you get that week, please invite me. I want to be there with you. So in my experience, the one thing that we've noticed, there's a huge gap, is the soft skills gap. So being in the human capital space, this is a big issue across the board. And the new trendy name now is something called transferable skills. Everybody's looking for transferable skills. Everybody's saying, technical skills, we can teach you how to do the thing, but there are other skills that we want you to come here with already. And this is an array of things, and communication is high on this list. Problem solving, creativity, etc. The list is as long as my arm. And I feel like there isn't enough focus on this, on school level. Before I get to a college, before I get anywhere, I feel like the HR trends or the work trends, schools and educational institutions are not keeping up to date with what these trends are and what employers are actually looking for. We're not talking to each other, which blows my mind. So if I'm looking for, if I know that hiring somebody who has a multitude of skills or transferable skills, if I know that this is what I'm needing, and at school level this is not being taught, it blows my mind. We need to be talking to each other, so that when person leaves school, when person leaves a previous college, I'm going through my apprenticeship or whatever it is that I'm doing, that I have the skills that I need to match the job market or what people need.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Ken to quickly provide his comments. We've got about 5 minutes left, and then I'd be interested to hear Manuela's reflection on what the three other panelists had to say.
Right, Sean. If I can kick off on my 5 minutes, then if I had the opportunity, I would not err on making sure that our biggest partner in the training part of our business, because we confer, consult, and train for the well-being of the industry. So the training component, the FP&M Seta is our biggest partner, obviously, and we work very nicely with them. I would make sure that somebody like Joe Rametse from the Seta is with me when I had that opportunity to address the ministers, and I would be talking about getting rid of some of the blockages that we have in the qualification development process. The QC, we really need to look at speeding up the processes of developing qualifications, of registering qualifications on the NQF, in getting the trade tests developed, and getting regulations in place that would see the linkage in those career pathways that I was talking about between those occupational qualifications that are derived from those trade qualifications, so that we would have a speedy development of all the external integrated summative assessments for those derived occupational qualifications, that they would count towards that artisanal final target of becoming an artisan in that specific trade area. There is a clear linkage, and that is not clearly regulated and needs to be. So that would be that would be a really practical, get rid of those blockages in your system discussion about let us advance the artisan. Honourable Minister Blade Nzamanzi was talking about that. He established NADAB, the National Artisan Development Advisory Body, for that specific purpose, and it hasn't really had that impact, and I'd like it to have that impact. We can't be waiting years and years and years for qualifications that have been developed to become registered, and that's my biggest concern at the moment. It's taken a lot. I had a full head of hair when I started this process, and it's from hitting the head against the wall that I lost it. So I'd really like to see that unblocked and getting a smooth transition from development through to implementation. So that's really.
Yeah, no, can you touch on a valuable point? I mean, I had started my career when there were still training boards,
Yes.
before Setas existed. And one of the benefits of those, they weren't perfect, but one of the benefits is that there was certainly a lot more flexibility for industry to develop those qualifications linked directly to outcomes, training outcomes. We've lost that flexibility with the introduction of the Seta structures. So, Manuela, your reflection on the comments?
No, I think all comments are extremely useful and important. I have to say that thinking about public players, on those who have responsibilities, I think there is one message that it's important to convey, and this comes from a study we did a few years ago at the ETF called Entrepreneurial Communities, where we were looking for experiences of communities, so actors that were coming together to address skills demands or skill gaps or issues related to skills. So what we found out there, and I can imagine that this is also something that will resonate with you, is that good things happen, be in the government there or not. So people, especially those who really have a strong vision and ideas, they find ways to crowd different partners together and get things done. Now, the question to the policymakers is, do you want to be part of this or not? So do you want to actually make sure that this energy and this empowerment of communities is used at its maximum or not? And generally, what we found out is that all communities need is the ability to come together. And sometimes that's the biggest blockage, is that those elements of ideas, of innovation, of partnership, but also working on, qualifications, on professions, on learning journeys are not supported. So everything we need to do is to open up to that and give the space for this to blossom. So what I always recommend to policymakers is really to reserve some of their time to be part of the community, because that is the way they can really be in contact with real life and real needs. And through that also accelerate the decision-making process that can be very slow, absolutely. Ken was referring to that. But which is also extremely challenged at this moment, because we know that also when we look at qualifications, people don't wait for the official recognition. There are many other things that are happening in the market that make it more flexible and more diversified. And this requires also some decision-making to be activated. So this would be my advice.
Manuela, thank you so much for that. And to the rest of the panel, and Manuela, thank you guys so much for your inputs. I wish we had a couple more hours to spend chatting, but we have run out of time. And thank you once again. All the best.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was the panel discussion on the rise of artisan careers. Truly informative and engaged. I was glued to the screen, and I hope you were too. Indeed, Dr. Jones there, we wish we had more hours with the experts and even yourself on the panel. Absolutely integral, particularly on the emphasis of partnerships. We don't achieve anything by working in silos, and I truly believe that out of these discussions, we are able to then apply certain fruitful associations and cooperation in this particular industry. So thank you very much there, Dr. Jones, CEO of Artisan Training Institute, alongside his panel members. Without wasting any more time, ladies and gentlemen, we'll engage in the second panel discussion, which is then called Jobs and Skills Mismatch. What is skills mismatch? I look forward to finding out just right after this.